And one day I got a phone call. Oh, it was a guy from the American embassy in Sofia who told me that they have credible information that there is an imminent threat of bodily harm attack against me.
Czech Center for Investigative Reporting and Dark Riviera present Protagonista, a war room content project hosted by Pavla Holcová. Protagonista puts investigative reporters at the heart of the story. Atanas Tchobanov is a Bulgarian investigative journalist with a PhD in computational linguistics. He transitions from environmental activism to journalism. His investigations exposed how US authorities purchased weapons from Bulgarian organized crime to arm Syrian rebels. Atanas, how did you get into investigative reporting? Because you know, that's not the beginning of your career, right?
Right. It's a recent. I cannot say it's a profession because I have another profession, but it's.
So you do hard-hitting investigative reporting as a free-time hobby?
Let's say like people who engage in some activism. They have a passion about changing society. It's better than activism, I think, because it has long-standing consequences for the politicians.
So how did you arrive to the point when you got engaged into investigative reporting?
So I have the experience of the communist regime. I finished my secondary school in 1987. Then the 1989 protests against the war, against the communism broke in many countries, including in Bulgaria, and I took part in those protests, but very soon I understood that the people who are leading the protests, they are the young communists. Nothing good was ahead. So I decided to change my place of living, moving to France. I found a job. I was working like alpinist in high buildings.
Alpinist?
Yeah, like, you know, I'm on a rope, you are cleaning windows or doing some repairs on the buildings that are difficult to access.
Where did you learn climbing?
I learned when I was in school. Climbing and speleology. Mm-hmm. You know, going underground in the mud. That's probably why I'm now in the investigative reporting, because there is a lot of it, a lot of mud. So I got a PhD in linguistics, but connected to computer science, and that's,
what does it mean?
It does mean what we call today deep learning. Uh-huh. But one day I met. By accident, one guy who Bulgarian, and we discussed together, and he said, "Why not making a small newspaper for the Bulgarians living in France?" But it was not investigative outlet. But we became quite popular among the diaspora. We had to close the newspaper because no money. But I met Bulgarian journalist. His name is Yordanov, and he said, I have plans to launch a website on investigative journalism, and we started working together with Asen and publishing some stories. And one of the stories was about the Bulgarian European Commissioner candidate. Her name was Rumiana Želeva. She was questioned in the European Parliament, and she performed very bad. I mean, her English was choppy, not at the level of commissioner. She was not competent, and so. And then we found that she was working for a company related to the Bulgarian Stasi. Before she became politician.
What do you mean by Bulgarian Stasi?
Bulgarian Stasi, well, like state security, communist state security.
Yeah.
Bulgarian KGB. The communist secret services, and she was working for a company founded by the agent,
KGB, Bulgarian
yes,
KGB.
Yes, exactly. And that was decisive. After we published this, it went mainstream, and she lost. She was not elected, and we became almost suddenly the nightmare of the politicians.
I want to talk about one story in particular, and that's we work on it together for OCCRP, and the name was Making a Killing, and it was about Pentagon pipeline that was draining like really old and crappy arms and ammunition from Balkans and Central Europe and sending it to rebels in Syria.
Exactly. Miranda Patrucic, she was in charge of this Making a Killing project. She contacted me. She said, we have a Bulgarian angle. The Pentagon was arming Syrian rebel army.
Liberation Army. And they used to buy old-style Soviet weapons because the Syrians had experience working with such. It's probably also cheaper for Pentagon.
Also, and the Pentagon was paying intermediaries in the United States, kind of arm dealers, who were hiring Bulgarian intermediaries. And the Bulgarians were bringing those stocks of old weapons from Albania, from former Yugoslavia countries, but they were really bad quality. And one of there was, of course, greed and corruption to buy them cheap, to repaint them and sell them as new to the Americans, But one guy lost his life because he was testing the ammunitions. There was an investigation, so we were able to trace the origin of those munitions, and we found that the intermediary company was closely tied to the Bulgarian Mafia of the 90s.
So Bulgarian Mafia from the 90s was selling arms to Pentagon to provide them to Syrian Liberation Army.
Yes.
What is wrong about providing arms to Syrian Liberation Army?
I don't know if it's wrong to providing arms to the Syrian army, because they had this project to defeat the dictator Assad. What is wrong is to charge the American taxpayers with money for new arms and selling old arms.
You're right. Also, the problem was that no one ever admitted that those arms are going to Syria. Everyone was pretending it's going to Saudi Arabia. Right? And why would Saudi Arabia need like really shitty equipment?
Of course they don't. That was the choice of the generals or the secret services not to make open source operation, but covered operation.
With the Czech angle of this story of providing arms to Syria, even though there was embargo, the trick was that Czech government never admitted of providing any arms to Syria, even though in US database of public tenders it was strict. It was clearly mentioned that it's going to Syria. And also they claim that something that's called end-user certificate would prevent the arms from re-exporting.
We've seen
how could piece of paper prevent arms from being...
Of course it's not prevent. You replace it with another piece of paper at the third country, and you lose. The trail is lost.
When conflict armament research did a study on ammunition used by ISIS, Islamic State, it was pretty much the ammunition that went
to the Syrian,
that was paid by
Yeah.
Pentagon.
And I was probably captured by
ISIS.
I hope so. Otherwise, it would be really weird. That's another problem, that the logistics in Syria was messy. This Syrian Liberation Army, in fact, they didn't train, they didn't fight. They only received an enormous amount of weapons, and what did they did with? They were probably captured by the enemy.
So they
resold to ISIS.
So they received a tons of arms and ammunition without knowing how to use it.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm.
So what exactly happened at the shooting range? US soldier
armed an RPG, and the RPG exploded in his head,
it means
in his face.
Like he was like, okay, I'm going to revise what we are buying.
Yeah, exactly.
What was the official comment
Blast
from the government? Or the Bulgarian government just said, this is a private business, we don't care?
No, but it's there was an official investigation by the prosecution. Could be if it's in they don't know at the beginning if it's what is the reason. He was probably shoot it, or someone manipulated the
RPG.
The RPG, but this was not the case. We learned that it was simply because grenades must be in the factory for being refurbished and not to be sold to anyone.
So you reported on many other stories as well, and one of the stories led to a phone call from a US embassy.
Yeah.
That was pretty much telling you
that
someone wants to kill you.
It was 3 years ago, not killing me, but the bodily harm. It's 3 years ago, in January, we just published a story about an American lobbyist, Tony Podesta, who is the brother of the famous Podesta from the emails, the Democrat, and he came to Bulgaria and founded a company with a lawyer who is the right hand of our national oligarch, Delyan Peevski. So you
publish a story on him, and
many stories. We have many stories about cigarette smuggling and interference in judicial. He's everywhere. He controls all the institutions because he has compromise. He has power, money, and
old school businessman.
Old school businessman, yes. Peevski was under Magnitsky sanctions already. He's designated under the Magnitsky Act as for significant corruption, for selling Bulgarian passports to foreigners. And one day I got a phone call sitting in my computer in my home. I read the number, and it was starting with Bulgaria, Sofia, +3592. So I almost never.
You mean landline?
Landline, yes.
From Bulgaria.
So when it happens very
rarely.
So I switched on my recording device. I was thinking it was from some institution, But no, it was a guy from the American embassy in Sofia who told me that they have credible information that there is an imminent threat of bodily harm attack against me.
That's a kind of weird call.
Yes, it's a very strange call, actually. I said, okay, but can you tell me more? Who is the origin, the threat? I said, no, I cannot tell you more, but you should be aware we have a legal duty to inform you.
Did it surprise you?
Of course, it surprised me. I was not expecting that the Americans will closely monitoring my work.
Maybe they were monitoring someone else.
Maybe they were monitoring someone else, yes.
You didn't see it coming. It really shocked you, or
Yes,
did you
it was quite
saw
shocking.
any warning
it was
signs?
quite shocking. No, I had so many warning signs before that.
You started to ignore those?
When there are such signs, you are safe. If they hit, you don't have any signs. And this call was actually very important because there was something ongoing. They prepared to hit, but they were intercepted. And the only way I could react, it was making it public.
So the call came from kind of a silence. You didn't see any warning signs, someone following
Not
you?
Not in that period. But before I had warning signs that I found one day a big toy wolf on my car.
I wouldn't interpret it as a warning sign, I would interpret
it
as nice fluffy blue gift.
Then I found a black hat on my car with made in Bulgaria, and I'm living in suburbs of Paris. But no phone calls, those threatening emails, nothing like this.
Why do they put the warning signs on your car?
It's saying that we know where you live, you probably find a bomb one day. So after that, I started looking under my car with this device.
So you did not, when you received this call, you didn't call for police protection or witness protection?
No, I reported to the French police. I got a bulletproof jacket.
That you were wearing every day?
Yes. When I was going out, it was winter time, so you can support it, but in summer it becomes a burden.
So you've been staying safe till summer when it got too hot?
No, when the story became public in Bulgaria, there was hearing in the parliament. At the moment it becomes a big issue. You can put back your jacket in the wardrobe because they will not hit. It becomes too expensive.
How did you tell your family? During the dinner, let me play you something.
I talked to my wife, to my kids, what should they do? And we have some protocols to not to be too exposed.
How did they took it, the situation that someone...
It's not easy to change your life habits for security reasons, but my wife didn't divorce. I hope...
So till today you don't know who wanted to harm you?
No, I don't know. And
no one ever told you?
No one ever told me, but probably someday they will add me to a secret signal chat where they will tell me. I don't lose hope.
How did you decide it's okay, now you can return to
normal life?
Normal life that could be probably never normal again.
I decided that after this noise in the media and it became there was a parliament hearing where I exposed the case and the Bulgarian prosecution opened the case. Even if it was only on paper, that was enough, because if someone is paying for this, he will
or she
when you are high profile, it becomes too expensive, and the case is monitored by international organizations. And
how much does it cost to kill you? Do you have any estimation?
It can be cheap.
Do you know your price?
Not hiring a sniper, but just
random
attack on the street for. It can be $10,000 or something. It's really cheap if you hire a guy who just to attack you on the street with a knife.
Do you still receive such a warning signs that someone wants to harm you or kill you?
Not currently, but we are more exposed to state surveillance, state actors.
Isn't it kind of a totally wrong and illegal to send secret agents from Bulgaria to follow a journalist in France?
Listen, they sent a guy to kill a journalist in London 50 years ago. Well, the methods are not changing. The people are the same.
What do you consider your most impactful story regarding a real impact and not just, you being hurt or murdered?
The biggest media coverage was one story about how Bulgarian politicians are buying real estate at low price, half price, and don't declare the full price. It had much more impact than stories about hundreds of millions of stolen money, because the average reader cannot imagine such an amount, but he can imagine a flat, and he knows the price.
How did they get this kind of a half?
Well, that's the question.
50% discount, let's say.
And more. One explanation is that they get it like for a bribe for something they will have to do in the parliament. And there was one case when one company selling real estate obtained special status for land to be allowed to build. And this company distributed many flats.
To many politicians?
To many politicians.
For half price?
Yeah, even less. Even less. But this is one angle. The other one is that if you get cash, you have to launder it. One way to launder is to find a seller who accepts to be paid cash for the flat. So you pay by bank wire, let's say 30,000 euro or 50,000 you borrow from a bank, and the cash you give it under the table, and when you go to the notary for the deed, you put the sum you transferred by bank wire, not the other one.
Right.
When we detected this the first time, it was the candidate for prosecutor general.
Yeah, the one who should keep an eye on
exactly,
the
and
law.
He explained that because it's widely accepted that this is a simulative transaction.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you think the change is possible in Bulgaria?
Yes, it's changing. It's slowly but surely it's changing.
Towards better or worse?
Towards better. We have a clear vision of who are the bad guys and that we need to eliminate them.
We as a citizens, or?
Yes, the civil society, I would say.
What would need to happen that it would all change?
There must be a tipping point to have something like in Belgrade, people on the street.
Well, it's not changing Serbia so far.
It is changing the minds. In Bulgaria, we had two waves of protests in 2013 and 2020 against the oligarchy, against the mafia, against the corruption, and they failed. But the failure improved the situation in the sense that there's more safeguards now against the state capture by the oligarchy. And also the pressure from the sanctions is working in this direction.
How?
I see that there is much more sensitivity to wrongdoing, and I feel that because Bulgaria is a Facebook nation, we are very...
So you're doing the politics on Facebook?
Mostly, yes. People are getting informed from Facebook, not from the mainstream media. I see the reaction of the people, the reach. I think that even if the mainstream televisions are controlled by the state actors, they cannot control the public opinion on social media. And when a story about corruption and breaks, it has much more impact now than 10 years ago.
So the Facebook community of people creates such a pressure on politicians, so they need to act and put the bad guys in jail?
No, the politicians are the bad guys. They cannot put themselves in jail, and they control the judiciary. For now, that's the main bottleneck. The bad guys are still there, but some of them are out of business already because of our work. Many of them, ministers, deputies, and so on.
Do you plan to return to Bulgaria?
I will probably share my time when I will be at the retreat between Bulgaria for the mountains and Greece for the sea.
So when you retire, you will just be outside in the mountains and next to the sea and give up on investigative reporting and computer linguistics?
Well, let's see. Probably I will not retire. No.